Hey there, guys. Alright, today we are back with some more geography. Now, this time onto the Gambia. Before we dive in, make sure you go and check out the links in the description box below. I would love it if you joined the Discord and followed me over at Twitch. Okay, I'm good. I got it under control. So this is two African countries back to back. Go ahead and dive right in.
It's the Gambia, not Gambia, the Gambia. You gotta put a the before Gambia. And it's Gambia, not Zambia, not Gambit, not Getbia, as in Bob Saget-bia, Gambia.
It's time to learn geography now!
Hey everyone, welcome to the Gambia. They actually deliberately chose to put the before Gambia to avoid confusion with Zambia, making it one of the only countries with a the in the shortened title. Wow, that was like the least witty opening I've ever made for a video. Okay, let's see. This place is so interesting, you'll be saying, Gambia!
Is that the first time you've...
First time you're using profane language on your show?
No, I meant dam as in a beaver dam. Ha! Keeping it clean since...
The fucking Percy Jackson. That's... Whenever... Whenever someone makes a joke like that, I just think of the Percy Jackson chapter in Titan's Curse. Literally the what? That's the chapter after fucking Bianca D'Angelo or whatever dies. I think her name's Bianca. If it's not Bianca, Nico's sister.
It's 2014.
Bum.
Dude, half of this country's charm is found in its strangely drawn borders and territory marks.
Oh, this is the Gambia. Okay, I know this yeah. This is a weird-looking country.
Not only is it the smallest country on mainland Africa, but it's also disputably the most oddly shaped. First of all, the Gambia is located on the furthest section of Western Africa off the Atlantic coast. Other than its 80-kilometer coastline on the Atlantic, the Gambia is completely surrounded by Senegal on all three sides and meanders inland following the Gambia River for about 320 kilometers. The country is divided into 8 local government areas, including the capital Banjul, which is classified as a city area, located on a small island just at the mouth of the river. The largest city just next door to Banjul, though, is Serekunda, and the entire country has one international airport, Banjul Yundum International, which, by the way, has a bunch of weird airlines that I never heard of that fly to it, like the UK's Thomas Cook Airlines and Lithuania's Small Planet Airlines. Whoa. Off the coast, the furthest plots of land that lay claim to the Gambia are the Bijol Islands. The Gambia is often referred to as the smiling coast of Africa due to the fact that not only are the beaches amazing, but if you look at the map, it kind of looks like Senegal is a deformed Pac-Man looking type of thing, and the Gambia is a cheeky, sultry Elvis curled lip grin smile. Otherwise,
I love Barbie's fucking brain. The shit he comes up, the shit he can, how he sees this stuff, the
country in itself looks like a snake with a horrible underbite. Now you might be
who the fuck thinks up snake with an underbite? You look at that and you're like, yeah, that's a snake with a fucking underbite right there. What?
thinking, okay, why does this country even exist? Like, it's so small. Wouldn't it be easier if they just joined Senegal and became one country? Well, that's a very observant but horrible conclusion. Now, you have to understand that in Africa, every stretch of territorial sovereignty claim matters, even if you can just take a morning stroll across one side of the country to the other. The reason why the Gambia is shaped like this is partially because of European colonialism and partially because of complacency. Senegal used to
Largely, yeah, European colonialism really fucked up Africa. Like, Africa should be the dominant superpower. That continent has so many natural resources that it should rule the world pretty much. And it has the population, it has the natural resources. It could do whatever the fuck it wants, but because of European colonialism creating these artificial borders and also stoking, it may not have been done entirely on purpose. So I preface this, I know a decent bit about colonialism, but I do not know the intricacies of colonialism, so this is me kind of just taking a guess, taking wild shots, going on a hypothesis here on colonial division, because I think what we see pre-colonialism is we see a much more unified Africa, right? Now, North Africa, because of its geographical closeness to Europe and the Middle East, we see it usually a little bit more divided, right? You have the Kingdom of Morocco, you have Tunisia, you have Algiers, you have Libya, you have Egypt, have all largely been their own separate political entities for a good amount of time, even before, you know, colonialism came in, before the modern states existed. Morocco's existed for a long, long time. But like in West Africa here, sub-Saharan West Africa, you would have, compared to what is there today, you had much more larger unifying empires exist here. You know, the Congo, Central Africa used to be a bit more united. I would say also Eastern Africa was perhaps slightly bit more united as well before colonialism came up and drew these artificial borders. And then thus also because colonialism lasted for a couple centuries, a few centuries, those artificial borders go deeper. They end up going a bit deeper where they now start creating, I would call them artificial divides that did not exist before colonialism. And yeah, like, I mean, I think we see that in the Middle East with Iraq, Syria, Jordan, Lebanon, those countries. Artificial borders there as well. And so with that, I'm like, yeah, Africa should rule the world, pretty much with the resources it has. But because of colonialism, we fucked them up. I mean, we also pretty much drained the land pretty hard. The infrastructure in place in Africa right now is still pretty much largely, I believe, colonial infrastructure that takes you from colonial resources and doesn't really interconnect the nation like, say, you see with European railroad system or American railroad systems and how it interconnects the country. You don't see that as much with Africa. They're getting there. They're working on it. But because of colonialism, it wasn't there. Kind of a long, rambling tangent that didn't really serve much of a point except for to talk about how colonialism fucks things up.
Belonged to the French Empire, and the Gambia used to belong to the British. Essentially, they drew the borders to follow the Gambia River with two straight lines jutting inland from the coast between 13 degrees 9 minutes and 13 degrees 30 minutes north. However, they made a deal and said that the Gambia could have all the land that flowed west of the Halahin Balong River in the south. This did, however, transect a portion of the Janak Peninsula, which is shared by both countries. Somewhere along the halfway point, they decided that the straight lines would stop and that the country would be allotted somewhere between 9 to 12-ish kilometers in every direction around the river on each side inland for about 320 kilometers. That's not a lot. I mean, area-wise, the entire country is only about the size of Jamaica. So essentially, the country is kind of like a river that
Actually, that's a fucking really good comparison to... Damn. Barbie, I like that comparison. That really helps put into contrast the size of Gambia. Because, obviously, the way it's shaped really gives it this, like... And it being a part of Africa, there's this... To me, there's this subconscious... picturing of this country being bigger than it actually is, and then he's like, that's roughly the size of Jamaica. That really puts it into contrast for how tiny
masquerades as a country. The most important route, though, would have to be the north and south bank roads. You can literally traverse the entire country on this loop road that starts west at Bara and then crosses the river at Fatoto and then heads all the way back to Banjul. Keep in mind, though, most borders aren't even really marked that well or at all. Most checkpoints between them and Senegal only appear on major roadways. Otherwise, you can totally cross into Senegal from virtually any open field along the way. A few notable sites would include the Senegambian stone circles, the world's largest concentration of stone circles and a UNESCO heritage site. Every visitor would go to the Arch 22, where you can get a nice panorama city view. If you have time, check out Kunta Kinte or Fort James Island, that has a somewhat austere backstory and was kind of technically part of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth at one point.
Yes, we made it to Africa that one time!
And that's the thing, in a lot of places in Africa, current borders don't really have much of a significance, but rather people tend to look at the tribal areas instead. And if that was the case, Africa would probably look more like this. Nonetheless, they still keep their country intact.
See, that's the complicated... Like, part of me wants to agree with that, but also a large part of me wants to disagree with that, because we see those large centralized empires, specifically in West Africa. West Africa I can speak more about because I wrote a paper on I wrote a paper it was my last history paper for college or for my bachelor's degree. And it was a paper on the development of statehood in North Africa and Sub-Saharan West Africa, comparing and contrasting the two and how they developed differently. Largely, I made comparisons with their colonial governments, etc., what they were like pre-colonialism, and then a little. I didn't go into what they're like post-colonialism. I stuck with pre-colonialism and during colonialism. That was a fun paper to write. But yeah, so West Africa pretty much had unifying centralized governments. Not all of West Africa was unified. It was like 3-4 kind of different empires. You had at different points in time. They didn't really rule a large landmass, but they ruled a significant portion that would take up multiple cultures. Now their treatment of those cultures is I cannot speak on because that was not part of the paper. So I don't know. I cannot speak on how well they treated the other cultures, but I would assume it would be largely like what we see in England. I think England would be a good example of English unification. The Angles and Saxons, that kind of thing, where they have common ancestry, and although they may be different, or perhaps maybe even a better comparison would be France, where you have the Occitans, you have the Gascons, you have the Normans. Yeah, Normans kind of are the same thing as the Parisian French. And you have the Britons, the Brittany region. Aquitaine is also slightly different. You have, but specifically like Gascony and Brittany are pretty different from, historically have fairly differing roots compared to that of the Parisian French, which would come to unify all of France. What is all modern day France? I kind of view that as, if there weren't colonialism, that's kind of what that's what Africa would be like. Africa would take a similar route as France did, and it would be somewhat similar cultures coming together, having a government. So like you would see these divides, and you would have parts of West Africa united, and then they'd be separate from Central Africa, South Africa, East Africa, North Africa, right? That's kind of how I view it. Could be entirely fucking wrong.
And it all has to do with that one lifeline that connects them all, the Gambia River. Well, to no surprise, Gambia's land makeup pretty much comprises of whatever surrounds the Gambia River. This means that the majority of the land is a flat, grassy floodplain with mangroves closer to the coastline. In fact, about 10% of the entire land area is made up of water alone, and the highest point isn't even named. It's just a random hill that goes up 53 meters. Because of its limited space, the Gambia has had to develop a really creative cultivation plan over the past few decades. About 60% of the land area is of good arable quality, of which 40% is used for farming. About 80% of the population lives off of subsistence farming, mostly in rural areas, contributing to about a third of the GDP and 70% of the country's foreign exchange earnings. This means that organization is key. The Gambia has a very complex yet structured format in allocating crop fields. You have compounds, dadabas, mauros, kamayangos, and sinkiros that are administrated by a nakalo. There's also a kind of unspoken custom. Women are in charge of field and garden crops, whereas men are in charge of tree crops. And the river supplies them all with irrigation. Two food sources that the country thrives off of course, seafood and peanuts. The Gambia River supplies them with an abundance of fish species like the cassava fish, pampanos, barracuda, butterfish, grouper, snapper, and of course everyone loves the Gambia River oysters. Peanuts are used as a staple in so many dishes like mafe stew and domoda. The country enjoys a relatively warm climate with a rainy season, especially along the coast. However, the further east you travel, the drier and arid the landscape begins until you reach the savanna upper inland. Since the whole country is situated around the river, this means that a huge portion of the land is comprised of wetlands and swamps, although sometimes hard to cultivate, are perfect for harboring rich biodiversity. Animals like river river birds, hippos, aardvarks, geckos, crocodiles, bush pigs, warthogs can be found, and even bottlenose dolphins playing at the mouth of the river. Speaking of which, the lion is the official animal of the country as it's found on the coat of arms.
Rawr.
Notable nature zones include the River Gambia National Park, heavily concentrated with wildlife, the Abuku Nature Reserve with monkeys, and check out the reptile farm in
Nope.
Canton. Now let's get a little crazier and talk about who's
I don't like snakes. Snakes scare me. They slither.
running the show called The Gambia, shall we?
Ba-da-da-ba-bum.
Okay, this is the part where the episode is going to get a little funny. And by that I mean when we discuss politics. First of all, the
Oh.
Gambia has
Oh,
about
no.
2 million people and is one of the least militarized countries in the world. The country is made up of a few main ethnic groups, the largest one being the Mandika at over 40%, the Fula at around 20%, the Wolof at around 16%, the Jola at 10%, and the rest is a conglomeration of other Africans like the Serahuli and other non-Africans. Also, they use the Gambian Dalasi as their currency, they use the Type G outlet, and they drive on the right side of the road.
You already know what I'm about to say. Hear that, Britain? The right side of the road. Because it's correct. It's correct. Right means correct. Okay? Okay? Everyone else doesn't. No. You make fun of the everyone makes fun of the Americans for using the imperial system, even though it's because of the fucking British that we use it. Okay? Also, hold on. I'm going on a tangent about the imperial system. I'm just saying, when it comes to Fahrenheit versus Celsius, I prefer Fahrenheit because it's much easier to imagine it being fucking hot when you say, oh yeah, it's 85 degrees Fahrenheit, not, I don't fucking know, what's the conversion, 40 degrees? 38, I don't know. You see, when you say that, when you say 30, that's a low number. That instinctively, subconsciously tells me, not that hot. But then you're like, boom, it's fucking 85. You're like, oh shit, it's fucking hot. Okay? I'm very passionate about this. I will continue to defend the Fahrenheit system just because it makes most sense subconsciously about heat. But yes, drive on the right side of the road, Britain. Fucking fix your shit. Everyone else does it. If you make fun of the Americans for always, for using the imperial system, even though we are taught both imperial and metric system, it's just I'm not in science, so I don't give a shit about the metric system. I think I use it for some things, but I can't really. I'm gonna be honest, they've become so interchangeable to me that like I don't really know which one's metric and which one's, like centimeters, meters. I think that's metric because metric goes in like 100s, right? I think. Whatever. Yeah. If you can make fun of us Americans for still using the imperial system, or we can make fun of you for being one of the few countries, like I think there's only 4 of you countries that drive on the wrong side of the road. Okay? Okay.
The largest ethnic group, the Mandika, have lived in the area for centuries, and they are the descendants of the Mali kingdom that stretched all across West Africa and had one of the richest kings in history. The earliest recordings have shown that the Gambia was subject to various African kingdoms as well, such as the Foni, Kombo, Sine, Saloum, and the Fulado. Around 90% of the country is Sunni Muslim, and the remaining 10% is Christian. Islam in the Gambia follows the Maliki school of jurisprudence, the system predominantly used in North and West African countries. It's interesting though, because kind of like the Comoros, even though the country is predominantly Muslim, Gambian women have incredibly loose clothing customs and statutes. Most women don't even wear the hijab, let alone abayas, but rather the typical pattern cloth dresses with exposed arms and necklines.
The reason for that is lesson on Islam. The hijab has its origins with Persian culture, but it became Persia really adopted and kind of became the large leader of Islam once it spread out of the Arabic peninsula. Persia kind of became the dominant culture leader of the Islamic religion. It became the cultural epicenter for the religion in a way. And through that, because Persia became the dominant force, the hijab took popularity and then it's become indistinguishable from, it is now part of Islamic culture after all these centuries of, you know, the hijab being seen as part of it, etc., etc. But yeah, originally Islam, I do not believe, incorporated like that the face covering. Yeah.
Official language is English, as the country for a while was a colony under the British Empire until independence in 1965. However, Mandinka, Wolof, Fula, and Jola are spoken as a first language to the majority of the population. It's not uncommon to hear people speaking French as a third language, though, due to their close proximity to Senegal and relative isolation from the nearest English-speaking country, Sierra Leone, at around 700 kilometers away. Music is huge out here. Disputably, the Wolof people have the best drummers. When listening, you'll be like, yeah, that's my Gambia.
No.
Of course, you can't miss out on a Mandinka Kankurang machete dance, which looks really cool. To address the illiteracy levels, they instead use a clear glass marble system in which the voter drops a marble in a steel drum to indicate the candidate that they want to choose. The Gambia has a strange political system. Technically, right now, there's a lot of drama between the outgoing president and the new one, this guy, who just won in 2016. I'm pretty sure this is the right picture of the guy. I know I've gotten a few notable pictures wrong in the past. Let's never speak of the Brazil incident again. Speaking of which, the official title of the president is Sheikh Professor Dr. President. Let's just say he claims he has the cure for AIDS, arthritis, diabetes,
Oh, that's that guy.
and infertility. Anyway, Jammeh originally conceded his loss to Adama, but then a few days after the election results, he was like, never mind.
Oh, I think I remember this, hearing about this like kind of on the news a little bit.
I guess he thought the results were a shambia. Oh. Guys, this is one of my best friends and former roommates, Caleb. Say hi. There's a lot of controversy, though, because Adama has proposed a lot of policies that seem to favor the UK, whereas Jammeh was literally quoted for saying, Britain has done nothing except teach the Gambians how to sing Ba Ba Black Sheep. Well, interacting with the UK has played a huge role of importance in the country before and after independence. Let's elaborate.
So what is the current status of the leader of the Gambia? Who is it? Who came out on top?
The Gambia, as mentioned before, is mainland Africa's smallest country, so to no surprise, they kind of have to make friends to get by. The Gambia plays an active role in West African and Muslim affairs, therefore has been reaching out to other nations like Libya and Mauritania. Mali, though, has a historical root and ties in with the Gambia, as the Mandinka peoples have origins in the Malian kingdom. When it comes to Asia, the Gambia has jumped back and forth between recognizing either the People's Republic of China or Taiwan. For the longest time, the Gambia was the third African state recognizing Taiwan for about 18 years until Jammeh changed his mind in 2013. China didn't respond right away since they were just a little suspicious, but eventually they reopened ties in 2016. The UK is a little tricky because even though Jammeh was not a fan of the Brits still maintained strong relations. The Gambia is an incredibly popular tourist destination as it's the closest English-speaking African country to them, and business still carries very well between them. Their two best friends, though, more or less, would probably be Senegal and Sierra Leone. At one point, the Gambia was part of both countries under the British colonial times until the French took over. Then Senegal and Sierra Leone decided to kind of do their own thing. Nonetheless, proximity and language are what closely tie these three countries. In conclusion, the Gambia is a small, skinny country that literally surrounds the parameters of one river, but man, have they made something out of it. Stay tuned. Georgia is coming up next.
All right, and that was Geography Now, the Gambia. I went on quite a few tangents and rambles here, so it's a long episode of Geography Now, but it was fun. I hope you guys enjoyed. Remember to hit that like button and subscribe for more, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.